Hey guys, Corey with Faymus Media, and today we're going to be looking at the Nikon D5300. So guys, the D5300 is here. The D5200 just came out last year, but here we go again. New set of features. This is well worth it. This camera kicks some serious behind. It's got some serious features that even my D4 doesn't have, like the built-in Wi-Fi and GPS. Now, Nikon, really? This camera is sub $1,000 and my $6,000 camera don't have Wi-Fi and GPS? Really? Please, Nikon, for the D4S, we want Wi-Fi and GPS built in. Please. I'm asking so nicely, please. Everybody back there, pray with me, please. Wi-Fi and GPS. Just nod your head. So now let's back to the D5300. The features that are better. One, this is X-Speed 4. The D5200 is X-Speed 3. So this is a little bit faster and a little bit cleaner images. It'll do a little bit better in low light based on specs alone. Of course, this also shoots 5 frames a second, and it's got the same autofocusing system as the D610 does, which is the multicam 4800. This is overall on paper is going to be a butt kicker of a camera for the cost that you're going to spend on like $800 roughly. Now also, the thing to mention about this camera is it has, oops, I left out the anti-aliasing filter yet again. It seems like Nikon's on a roll with that. Maybe they're just trying to save money, just leaving things out. But they're actually not leaving things out. I think it's more of a modified version of the anti-aliasing filter, because there's no moire, so they have their little way that they do it. Maybe it's patented, I don't know, but it works, and there's no moire in any of the images on this or the D7100 or the D800E, which is filming us right now, and there's no moire, is there? They do a great job with no anti-aliasing filter on the cameras, and this $800 camera has no anti-aliasing filter. The images on this are crystal clear and sharp. This camera performs and has 39 autofocus points. So let's just hit the streets and take some photos, and let's stop talking about features because it doesn't mean nothing until you actually take a look at the images. Let's take a walk, come on. The D5300, of course, this is the red version. They come in black as well. It's a really light camera, as you can see with the 85mm 1.4G on it. It's actually bigger than the camera is. It kind of looks like a unbalanced setup, if you will. Of course, another thing to note is the screen pops out and flips. So you got a poppy, flippy screen here. You can, you know, do self-portraits of yourself in any case. So you hit your info button here and you can go into the menu and change anything from the auto exposure, bracketing, ISO, your white balance. Let me bring that back up there again. Your different types of autofocusing that you have, your autofocus auto, autofocus continuous, autofocus single, up to 39 autofocus points. You change your aperture right here on the rear dial, and because we're in aperture priority mode, it'll do the rest for me. And we're in autofocus auto mode, which I'm going to change that to continuous manual.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the features of the D5300. First, we have the pop-up flash button, which if you hold it and turn the rear dial, will allow you to adjust your flash compensation. And there's the FN button, and of course the button to release your lens. You've got your different shooting modes here on the bottom to change from burst and single and also timer mode. And right here behind the flap, you've got your HDMI output, of course your microphone input, and your multi-AV out as well. Now we're going to go ahead and turn the camera around, and of course the D5300 has a 3.2-inch display and the D5200 had a 3-inch. So this is a little bit bigger, and of course it has much better resolution as well. and it flips and it covers to protect itself so it doesn't get damaged while it's not in use. Now, on the back of the camera, you can see the different buttons here, like the zoom in and the zoom out. Now you got your play button right above the D-pad, so you can review your images. And if you're like me and you like to do a little pixel peeping, you can use the zoom in and zoom out buttons. And there's the trash button. You can go ahead and press that twice to delete your image. And right below the play button, you've got your D-pad with the OK button in the center. At the top of the camera, you got your info button, and beside that, your auto exposure lock button, which you will hold in aperture priority to lock the exposure. Now going into the menu, you can change everything from exposure compensation, white balance, active D-lighting, auto bracketing, picture controls, focus modes. It's pretty amazing. Right here you've got your diopter controls. You can adjust it if you're wearing glasses or if you're wearing contacts, which adjusts the viewfinder and fine-tunes it. Right there you've got your rear dial, which will control your shutter speed. Here is your SD memory card slot, which will take SD, XC, and HC cards. Right here in the front, of course, you got your shutter button and your power on and off button. You just drag it to the left to turn it off and drag it to the right to turn it on. Here is your exposure compensation, which, of course, if you hold that, you can also adjust your aperture control in live view. Below that, your info button, and beside it, your record button. Now, this is the master control dial, which will allow you to select between manual, program mode, aperture priority, and shutter priority, as well as different effects. Right beside it, this lever controls and activates the live view function. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the camera for a few seconds here and let you guys see how it works, and adjust some of the settings as the cars pass me by, and of course a guy on a bike. The only thing that bothers me about the D5300 is the fact that it cannot change the aperture in live view, like most consumer Nikon cameras. You see I'm changing the aperture, but nothing's happening on the screen. Why Nikon has not fixed this is beyond me. I think they need to start paying attention to what customers want. That's the only real drawback to this camera. In fact, if it had aperture control in live view, it would be a flawless camera. Nikon, we need aperture control in live view. Don't make us protest outside your building.
So the D5300 weighs about 480 grams, which is really light. It's about the same as the 85mm 1.4G lens. It's actually a really light camera. Take it anywhere. This does 1920 by 1080. It does 24p, 30p, does 60 frames. Also does 720p. Takes SDHC cards or regular SD cards. It will take SDXC cards as well too. This camera is really well balanced. It's a really good camera. So if you're just looking to start out with photography, or you've been shooting a little while and you're not a professional and you're just looking to, have a camera that's going to take great images you can take around with you, the D5300 is the camera for you. Especially if you're just starting out, it'll give you all the features you could ever possibly need. And while the build quality is definitely not on par with the D800, the D7100, or the D4 for that matter, the image quality is stunning for a camera like this. To get this kind of image quality out of a camera that's less than $1,000 is unbelievable. So if you are just starting out as a photographer and you're looking to get into it, the D5300 is actually the camera that I recommend for you. Overall, the features are great. The image quality is stunning. So for a camera that's less than $1,000, like I said, it's fantastic. The autofocusing capabilities of this camera seem to be pretty good. The focusing is quick. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. I'm pretty surprised. I still can't get over how light this is. 480 grams for a body. This is a really small body though. You can even see in my hands that the D5300 is kind of small. It's good for taking places. Even me being a professional photographer would be good for me because I could take it places where I didn't want to carry the extra weight of the D800 or the D4. The D5300 is a well-balanced camera, even with this big lens on it. Has the same autofocusing motor as the D610. The autofocusing on this camera is much improved over the D5200. Much better than the D5200. So the D5300 has some great video features. It has 1080p and 720p. It'll do 24 frames, 30 frames. It'll even do 60 frames. And of course, you can't change the aperture while in live view. Nikon needs to fix this. And if you want to know what aperture in live view is, put the link down there at the bottom. I did a whole video of that last year on explaining exactly what aperture in live view is. The video quality is very, very nice on the D5300, of course, with its no anti-aliasing filter. The images are sharp. A little shaky because I'm on 85mm and I'm not using VR, as there is no VR on this lens. It's a fantastic camera. Hobbyists and enthusiasts will love this camera. It performs. And the image quality is stunning. Overall, this is a great camera. It shoots well. The autofocusing, like I said already, is great. The 4800 multicam DX sensor this has got just performs. And the fact that it's X-Speed 4 processing, the low light capabilities have got to be improved over the D5200. The D5300 does take an EN-EL14 battery. Of course, on the streets, I'm shooting an aperture priority. You just set the camera to A on the top of the dial here, and you can go ahead and adjust your compensation. I've got my exposure compensation at -0.3, which I would recommend for any Nikon camera.
So let's go ahead and start the low light test. The D5300 just performs at ISO 400 and 800. The image is flawless. Even at ISO 1600, there is no noise whatsoever that I can see. And at ISO 3200, the image is as clean as an OCD person's fingernails. However, ISO 6400, noise does creep into the shadow detail, but that's expected. And by ISO 12800, the camera is just pleading with you, please turn up the lights and turn the ISO down, you amateur. Moving along to ISO 25600, oh boy, you just wouldn't listen. And now, I mean, does this look like an image or a piece of sandpaper with dust all over it? I mean, you tell me. The Nikon D5300 is so much better than the D5200. It's bumped from a 3-inch screen to a 3.2 with higher resolution, might I add, and also the new X-Speed 4 processor, which provides much better low-light possibilities. And of course, it's got the Multicam 4800 autofocusing system, which is identical to the one in the D610. And of course, it also has built-in Wi-Fi and GPS, and no anti-aliasing filter, giving you tack-sharp images every single time. This is a knockout punch and home run for Nikon. Whether you're an amateur or a hobbyist photographer looking to upgrade your current camera, or you're new to photography and don't know where to begin, the Nikon D5300 is the best consumer camera on the market today.
So guys, the D5300 is a fantastic camera, and priced below $1,000 in the $800 range puts it in a market where no other camera can compete. It's 24 megapixels X-Speed 4 processing, whereas the D5200 is an X-Speed 3. This also has no anti-aliasing filter, or some people's way of putting it is a modified version, which they do a great job, as there's no moire in this camera at all. Do we ever think the day was going to come that we're going to have no anti-aliasing filter in a camera for less than $1,000, and it was going to be 24 megapixels? Well, guess what, Nikon? You've done it. And on top of that, you've crammed in GPS and Wi-Fi. So this camera is just loaded with features to the point where it's a consumer camera with professional features. This is a really, really good camera. And if you're looking to get into photography and you're not a professional and you don't know where to start, this is where I would start. It does 1080p, 720p at 24 frames, 30 frames, and even 60 frames. This camera does amazing video, and with its lack of anti-aliasing filter, it does everything except rub your feet and kiss you goodnight. Now, ain't that something? The D4 doesn't even have a Wi-Fi or GPS, but yet the D5300 does. Is there something wrong with this picture? Well, not really. I guess Nikon is really stepping up their game in the consumer model cameras, so the D5300 is it. All kidding aside though, this is a great camera, and I think you should seriously check it out. If you're not a professional and you're looking for something in the $1,000 range, this is your camera. So guys, the Nikon D5300 is a fantastic consumer camera loaded with features. They kind of just bumped the D5200 right out of the way. 24 megapixel XP4 processor, D5200 was XP3. ISO range 100 to 25,600, of course expandable to that range. This camera is fantastic. It also has the same autofocusing system as the D610, which I did a review on. I'll put the link down there in the bottom. The D5300 is a fantastic camera and gives you features that even my D4 doesn't have, like the built-in Wi-Fi and GPS. Nikon, what are we doing here? Can we get a GPS and a Wi-Fi built in for the D4S, please? In any case, the D5300 is the camera to get if you're not a professional and you're just looking to start out. And if you're looking to spend less than $1,000, there's nothing less than $1,000 that's going to give you better image quality than this camera right here. This is a fantastic camera for the money. You cannot go wrong. The features are brilliant. Like I said, with the built-in Wi-Fi, GPS, built-in stereo mic, 1080p and 720p video at 24 frames, 30 frames, and 60 frames. It is a magnificent camera, and it's balanced and it's light. You can't go wrong with this camera. I think it's, like I said, fantastic. It's got built-in flash. You can record. It's got built-in mic, HDMI output, everything you can think of. Great camera for the money. Nikon, you're on fire here. Of course, they've left the anti-aliasing filter out of this camera as well. So if you want to purchase anything here or review, I'm going to put a link down there at the bottom. Please support the channel and purchase the links below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And a big shout out going out to Bart and Kevin at Ryther Camera, RYTHER, for hooking us up with all the gear to review for you guys. So I'm Corey with Faymus Media, and happy shooting.